I go by the name John Jay. That's kind of my moniker that I go by in town. And ultimately, I grew up partially in Orem. I moved here when I was 10 years old and went to Hillcrest Elementary School, ended up going through Lake Ridge, and then graduating from Orem High. I eventually went to BYU and met my wife, who is also from Orem, graduate of Orem High. And we now have 5 kids. My oldest is 21. My youngest is 13. I have a set of twins. And anyway, we relocated to Orem, Utah in 2012. And we love it here. I grew up here, enjoyed, the different seasons and whatnot, but ultimately moving back, it was even better than I could have expected. My kids are happy here. I'm happy. So a lot of good jobs, a lot of good work. It's a great state to live in, great city to be in. Ultimately, my background is in construction management. I graduated from the College of Engineering in the construction management department and spent my career more or less in land use and the horizontal improvements on properties and the legal changes to property for construction. And I've done lots and lots of projects from Nevada to northern Utah to Wasatch County to wherever. So my profession ultimately puts me in front of city councils a lot. And that's a big detail. I think for someone who's running for city council, I have experiences that allow me to understand the nuances of city government and the format of city meetings. I do a lot of work with city planners, engineers, different utility departments. I have a lot of interaction with utility companies and then ultimately the planning commissions and city council members. So ultimately that's my career. I basically interface professionally with cities. And then, this is my opportunity to run for city council and looking forward to it. It's a pleasure to, be a part of a good race in a good city. My priorities as an elected official really boil down to 3 issues. They primarily start with the people. I'm a big believer that everything we do in a city or what we do in a community or what we do via policies really needs to be boiled down to how does that affect people, right? Sometimes people get those confused that we start to focus on initiatives, we start to focus on the outcomes, but it really is about the people. So my number one priority would be the good people of Orem City. My next initiative would be, or focus would be, land use and growth. I think everybody is feeling the squeeze. I think everybody gets it. There's a lot of people running because of those issues. I understand that very well. I have a lot of experience with land use and growth. There's a lot of cool things that can be done, a lot of good things that can be balanced and good for everybody. The last one is water. This drought, I think, is a wake-up call. I've been interacting with water and legal systems in the water property rights for a long time. So I have a little bit of understanding of water different than other people. But with the drought, we have a responsibility to be better stewards. Utah right now has an interesting situation. I believe Orem City could be a great example for the rest of the state. We have already really good policies in place. I think we do a great job in our water use already. Unfortunately, it's still more than we have. We need to do even better efficient use for water. So those 3 things: the people, growth, and water. It's always a good question to talk about our strengths. Our strengths, again, are our people, okay? We also have something else that's really cool that people have done before I ever got to Orem. Our forefathers, our previous leaders, our previous administrations worked really hard to give us a lot of good job growth. So we got a lot of good people. We're basically the gem of Utah County, and I think Utah County is the gem of the state. So we have the most amazing people. We have an amazing job growth and entrepreneurialism and businesses being started here in Orem. That's a big deal. People are choosing to move to Orem. People are choosing to open their businesses in Orem. That right there is a huge accomplishment. It could easily be the other way, right? People could choose not to live here. People could choose not to start their business here. And thankfully for us, they're choosing to come here, and they believe in Orem City. They believe this is a great place. So our greatest strengths are our people and our ability to create a really good environment for good jobs and good incomes and a good place to live. Ultimately, I think we also have some really awesome, amenities and parks and trails, and we have an amazing environment. We have such a cool location inside of Utah County. So I love our situation along I-15. I love our different amenities and facilities in the city. A lot of people have done a lot of hard work prior to this point, and we're the benefactors of those. So I think those are our strengths, and ultimately I would like to make sure that we never lose focus on those things. Some of these issues are pretty, common. I mean, people are concerned about, all the people moving here. People are concerned about all the growth that's coming from those people. There's more traffic, right? And we have all these interesting interfaces. I'm a big believer that we were lucky to live here in our generation. We need to perpetuate that same attitude and that same love and that same welcomeness for the people that are to come after us. Some of those people are our children. We're raising great families here. It's really hard to afford to live here. I never thought I would see that. And right now, I'm pretty convinced that if we don't do some pretty positive and forward-thinking ideas, our kids will not be able to live here. So ultimately, what I'm focused on, the challenges and the stresses that I think we're all feeling, a lot of it has to do with growth. I think we ultimately need to remember that those people that are moving here could be our kids, could be people from out of state, could be people from other parts of the planet, and ultimately we need to make sure that we're ready to receive them, we're ready to welcome them. And I know that causes stress for people. I think that there's the conversation about, well, how can we provide for all the traffic, and how can we provide all the resources for them? And I agree, those aren't simple situations, but the people are coming. And what's so cool is they're choosing to come here, and they're going to be our neighbors, and we're fortunate to have them as our neighbors. So ultimately, I think our biggest challenge is making sure that we are ready to prepare for the future, primarily to help our kids, because if we don't do those things, if we're going to start to look for ways to prevent our neighbors to coexist with us, I'm telling you right now, those neighbors are your children. And I for one, want to make sure my kids and everyone else's kids have an equal opportunity to live in a great city as Orem. To give closing remarks is a good opportunity to kind of just put a capstone on the overall, campaign, the overall, element of who I am, right? So ultimately, like probably every one of the other candidates, I love Orem. I have loved living here when I was young. I love living here now. There's just so many cool things about Orem. And I love what our predecessors have done. I love how they have worked together with a very challenging issues. I think the city management is doing a great job. I know there's interesting issues that people need to still figure out. And ultimately, I'm looking to add positive energy to Orem, Utah. I'm looking for ways to make sure Orem only gets even more amazing. And I ultimately am looking for ways to make sure that our kids still have a place to live, that we're ready to receive the growth that's coming. It's coming whether we like it or not, and I'm looking forward to it. And ultimately, I want to make sure we have water, because I think, we're used to having our taps just run with water, and I think it'd be crazy to think that there's a day that's not going to happen. But there's a reality here that ultimately, if the drought gets too deep, and if we have more than one drought year after year, we're going to find ourselves having some really interesting challenges, different than we have today. And so I'm looking for ways to basically become better, efficient users as a city and as a community for water, which ultimately impacts a lot of those other issues. Ultimately, I believe that there's a good way to manage the traffic. I really believe there's a good way to manage the growth. These are difficult issues, but one that I deal with day in and day out of my daily career. So I really believe that ultimately I get how a city functions. I get how the different departments work together. I get all the issues that ultimately are impacting Utah County, and especially Orem, Utah. There may be other issues that I'm not 100% on, but I ultimately have the capacity to learn and make sure that I understand those things. I look forward to continuing the positive energy that I believe exists in Orem. And I'm one person that ultimately believes that I can bring positive energy, I can bring good experience, and I have the wherewithal to know how to solve some of these issues, at least from a positive solution-minded direction. So my ultimate comment to leave with folks today is I'd really like you to vote for John Jay. I look forward to the election on August 10th, and I think it's going to be a great election, and look forward to moving forward throughout the election process and hopefully victorious in the end.